everyone, and welcome to my new series about neurodivergence in literature. It's currently Autism Acceptance Month, and since I'm on the autism spectrum and classic lit was one of my special interests, I thought it would be a great time to share some of my favorite characters with autistic traits. Now, the point of this series is to show that although words like autism and ADHD are fairly new, neurodivergent people have always been around, and since authors draw their characters from real life, characters with neurodivergent traits are all over the works of classic literature. Just to be clear, I am not armchair diagnosing any of these characters as neurodivergent, and I think it's important to acknowledge that the authors of these works did not explicitly write these characters to be neurodivergent, so it is incorrect to refer to them as neurodivergent characters. I am also not going to be referring to these characters as neurodivergent coded, because coding is the use of culturally recognized signifiers to imply a concept without explicitly stating it, and the concept of neurodivergence did not exist when these books were written. What I will be talking about is the traits these characters show which are associated with neurodivergence. So instead of autism, I'm going to be talking about autistic traits. I think it's really important to talk about neurodivergent traits in characters because there's such a lack of explicitly neurodivergent characters, and the characters we do get are often dangerous and dehumanizing stereotypes, especially for autistic people. So, that's my general overview. Now, on to today's topic. Since I'm currently doing a series on dancing in Jane Austen adaptations, I thought I would talk about some of Austen's characters with neurodivergent traits, starting with the man himself, Mr. Darcy. Now, I am definitely not the first person to notice that Mr. Darcy has some strong autistic traits, and there's a great video by Yo Samdisan that mentions Mr. Darcy as a favorite character whom she thinks of as autistic in her headcanon. Here's a link if you want to check it out. She has some really lovely videos on autism in general, and I highly recommend them. I actually didn't notice that Mr. Darcy had autistic traits when I first read the book because I hadn't yet been diagnosed myself, and I had only vague stereotypes of autism. However, I did relate a lot to his characterization at the time, and I think that in itself is telling. I would like to thank a friend of mine for bringing Darcy's spectrum traits to my attention when she was rereading the book a few months ago. As soon as she said it, I immediately saw how much sense it made for the character, and for me, it was headcanon accepted. Austen loved to trick her readers into a false perception of a character so she could have a big reveal later on. So, it's important to remember when reading Darcy that we perceive him as snobby because that's how our point of view character perceives him, not because that's the whole story. So what autistic traits does Darcy show? Number 1, Darcy hates small talk. This tends to be true of autistic people whether we're introverted or extroverted. Socializing is difficult for us, and we tend to avoid it unless we're really invested in either the topic or the person we're talking to. Darcy offends everyone at the ball because he doesn't want to dance, and the reason he gives for not dancing is that he doesn't know anyone, and he doesn't like dancing unless his partner is someone he already knows well. This makes sense because English country dancing, as danced in the Regency, involved long periods of waiting before you started dancing and brief periods of inactivity within the dance itself, during which time you were expected to socialize with your partner. Darcy describes the thought of having to make small talk with strangers as a punishment, literally painful, and I think a lot of autistic people can relate to that feeling of discomfort. But unfortunately for Darcy, by choosing not to dance, he is violating a strict social code. It was considered the duty of gentlemen at balls to partner themselves with ladies who wanted to dance, and if they weren't acquainted with anyone, they were expected to ask the host to introduce them. You could see where this would be really intimidating to Darcy since he's brand new in town. Later in the novel, when Elizabeth points out how rudely he acted at the ball, Darcy explains his impoliteness in a way that autistic people can relate to. I certainly have not that talent which some possess of conversing easily with strangers.
I cannot catch their tone of conversation or appear interested in their concerns as I have seen others do.
Autistic people tend to struggle a lot with things like social tone, and as I said, it's hard for us to make small talk. Darcy is really self-aware about this. Number 2. Darcy strictly follows the rules of social interactions and gets upset when people break them. When asked to describe a character weakness, Darcy says,
I cannot forget the follies and vices of others as soon as I ought.
Which explains why he has such a hard time dealing with the Bennet family, who are constantly transgressing the rules of polite society. Autistic people in general love rules, and we tend to get really frustrated with people who bend and break them. This is especially true for social interactions, probably because autistic people have a hard time with social interactions in general, and the rules really help us to navigate an area of life that can be deeply uncomfortable. Unfortunately, this tendency to rely on rules can also make us unforgiving of others when they break them. You notice that people like Bingley, who have actual good manners, understand when to overlook people breaking the rules and smooth it over when they make social mistakes, whereas Darcy either gets upset or shuts down. Yep, again, really relatable for autistic people. Number 3, Darcy is an intellectual snob.
Where there is a real superiority of mind, pride will always be under good regulation.
Sadly, this is true of many autistic folks. We tend to be good in school, and being smart is one of the few things we get praised for, so we tend to latch onto it as our primary source of self-worth. Darcy is extremely analytical in all his observations. He argues when people make generalizing statements, and he points out errors in their logic. Elizabeth is accurate enough when she characterizes him as unwilling to speak unless he has something to say that will amaze the whole room. You can see how much Darcy values intelligence in others because it's the first thing that attracts him to Elizabeth. He notices that her face, quote, was rendered uncommonly intelligent by the fine expression of her dark eyes, unquote. And when he describes his ideal woman, it's a woman who improves her mind by extensive reading. Number 4. Darcy can be oblivious and inappropriate in his conversation, especially when he's nervous. Autistic people try to learn to follow the rules of society, but we still mess up a lot. We're more prone to making social mistakes when we're nervous, too. Darcy's proposal to Elizabeth is a great example of this. He's agitated and speaking extemporaneously, and in his excitement, he doesn't realize that the things he's saying are incredibly inappropriate and hurtful. When Elizabeth points out how bad his behavior has been, not just in that conversation, but throughout their entire acquaintance, he is genuinely shocked and mortified. He later tells Elizabeth,
Your reproof, so well applied, I shall never forget. Had you behaved in a more gentlemanlike manner. Those were your words. You know not, you can scarce conceive how they tortured me.
Yep, big autistic mood. Number 5, Darcy answers questions literally and honestly instead of giving the polite response. Sometimes people ask rhetorical questions, or they say something in a way that seems like they're asking your opinion, but they actually just want you to agree with theirs. This can be really confusing and uncomfortable to autistic people because we tend to take things very literally. Asking us something like, don't you agree, and expecting a polite agreement instead of our honest answer is very counterintuitive to us. We might even know intellectually that you're not looking for our honest opinion, but phrasing it that way really makes it hard for us to do what it's expected of us. It kind of feels like lying to us. Darcy has this problem a lot in conversations. Sir William Lucas expects polite agreement when he calls dancing one of the refinements of every polished society. But Darcy's logical brain immediately sees the fallacy in this because dancing is universal to human cultures regardless of how sophisticated they're considered. And that's what he tells Sir William. I am so guilty of doing that and annoying people. The proposal scene is another example of being honest even when it hurts people's feelings. The reason Darcy tells Elizabeth how uncomfortable he feels about her family's social position and lack of propriety is because he just can't pretend that it doesn't bother him. His exact words are,
"If I had concealed my struggles and flattered you into a belief of my being impelled by unqualified, unalloyed inclination, by reason, by reflection, by everything. But disguise of every sort is my abhorrence, nor am I ashamed of the feelings I related. They were natural and just."
He perceives his rudeness as honesty, and he doesn't realize how deeply personal and humiliating the subject is for Elizabeth until she calls him out for it. Ouch. But again, relatable. Number 6. Darcy is bad at reading subtext and not effective at communicating his own wishes. Autistic people tend to be really bad at explaining our feelings, and we struggle with reading body language, and we tend to assume that other people are telling the truth because we have trouble lying and hiding our feelings. This means that if someone is giving a polite response, but they don't actually mean what they're saying, we might not pick up on it. It never occurs to Darcy that Elizabeth is teasing him as a defense mechanism because she's afraid of him criticizing her. Teasing is something Darcy associates with friendliness and even flirtation, so he assumes that if Elizabeth is teasing him, she must like him. It never occurred to him that she could conceal her hatred like that. So, now that Darcy thinks Elizabeth likes him, see how he takes her polite excuse literally the first time she refuses to dance with him. She turns him down by saying that she has no intention of dancing. In doing this, she is following the social rules for turning someone down, which stated that if you refused to dance with someone, you had to sit out for the rest of the dancing. But Darcy takes her words very literally. He actually thinks that she must not feel like dancing, rather than consider the possibility that she'd rather excuse herself from dancing entirely than dance with him. With that in mind, the next time he asks her to dance, he asks if she feels like dancing rather than expressing any interest in dancing with her himself, which would have been a more normal and a more flattering way to ask her. Here's where I need to talk about how autistic people are not good at expressing their feelings. If Darcy had actually shown Elizabeth in any way that he liked her and actually wanted to dance with her, it might have mitigated some of her hostility. Yeah, she started out under the mistaken impression that Darcy didn't like her, but Darcy hasn't actually given her any clear indication that he did like her, and if he had, it probably would have softened her dislike somewhat. But because Elizabeth doesn't perceive Darcy as anything but hostile, and because he doesn't explicitly say that he wants to dance with her, she misconstrues his question as him trying to be judgmental about her taste in dancing, so she refuses. It's funny and sad because he thought he was being considerate by asking if she actually wanted to dance, but she inferred that he didn't actually want to dance with her because he didn't express any interest, and he had a history of saying that he didn't like to dance. This is a way autistic and neurotypical people miscommunicate all the time. Number 6, Darcy is more social when he's in his comfort zone. Autistic people find it much easier to open up and be themselves either when they're in familiar surroundings or talking about something they love. Darcy has a hard time functioning at parties and when he's staying over at other people's houses, but he's much friendlier and at ease when he's at home. He loves his family estate, and he has absolute freedom there, so he's able to open up and be much friendlier to both Elizabeth and her aunt and uncle when they visit him. So anyway, those are some of the traits that Mr. Darcy shares with autistic people. Headcanon accepted? If you can think of more autistic traits that Mr. Darcy shows, please leave them in the comments. Also, comment to tell me your favorite characters with autistic traits. And if you enjoyed this, please give us a like and subscribe for more content. And if you're interested in really in-depth and nerdy analysis of historical accuracy of dancing in Jane Austen adaptations, check out my series, Jane Austen on Point. The next character on our list is Christopher Columbus. It's Joe March. See you next time.